Hey everybody, and hello humans. This is Not a Robot's comic review show. Today we're going to be looking at some of the recent releases that have come out in the past couple weeks from various different... Hey everybody, and hello humans. This is Not a Robot's comic review show. Today we're going to be looking at some of the recent releases that have come out in the past couple weeks from various different publishers such as Image and Dark Horse and others. My name is Brandon, and today I've got my amazing co-host here with me, Julie.
Hello, I'm Julie.
We're here to summarize, analyze, and editorialize every issue we cover without worrying what the publishers think. We are on Twitter at NotARobotComics. We answer all show mail sent to notarobotcomics@gmail.com. The next part is dedicated to those that support us with their hard-earned money, but that's not the only way you can. Like, subscribe, download, and share our episodes as much as possible. It helps get the word out, and that's the best kind of advertising. Now is the time to say a big thank you to the humans who help us support the podcast. They subscribe to our Patreon, with tiers starting at just $1 a month, so that we can make sure to keep bringing you more content. This is the Not a Robot, Must Be a Human shout-out and roll call. And that shout-out goes to our humans, Weird Science Jim, Blue Mondays, Hollister, and Roch Crockett. A big salute to all of you, and an even bigger thank you. So what are you waiting for? Sign up now and show us you just might be a human after all, and get a shout-out on the Not a Robot, Must Be a Human roll call. Now, before we begin, Julie, is there anything going on with you this week that's new that you'd like to share?
I got my second vaccine shot, and I am
Awesome.
super tired.
That's fair.
Yep.
When
And
uh, when did you get it?
yesterday,
Oh, okay. And have you been feeling any side effects, or are you just, kind of feeling the same way you usually do?
just a little more sore and tired than usual. But I mean, with the first
Yeah.
shot, it was much worse. I was laid out for taking a nap for 12 hours.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure. Yeah, no, my dad is getting his second shot today, and I told him basically, like if you're super tired, I'll just send you a text instead of calling you tonight, just because I get that sometimes the effects can be pretty severe.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's good. At least you're fully vaccinated at this point.
Yeah, I can go around. It's the idea in my head was sort of like,
Yeah, no, I totally get that. As for me, it's a very relaxed day here where I am, very sunny. So everyone's out enjoying the weather, which is always nice to see. So I was kind of doing that a little bit earlier before we recorded. I was telling Julie I almost forgot that we had our session today, and I'm definitely eager to get back out there because it's a really gorgeous day.
yeah.
But without any further ado, let's get into this week's review. So today we're going to be covering the two of us, just two books from Image, and then we're going to kind of split off into a separate review session where each of us are going to be mentioning some books that we had the opportunity to read that maybe we both didn't get to read, but that we'd still like to share and reflect on and that sort of thing. So to get us started, we are going to look at Geiger number one. Julie, would you like to walk us through Geiger number one?
Geiger number one, well, for me, felt like the game Fallout, but more story driven.
Yeah.
Because it kind of starts off, you think you're on some planet somewhere, and then
Hmm.
as it transitions into the time of where the things happened, I'm getting a lot of Fallout 4 vibes.
Yeah.
And then once all the rest of that happens, it's very survival. What's that genre? It's just survival genre, I guess. But I really did like a little bit of the intimidation tactics when the main character did.
Mm.
I'm already, rooting for the main character in this
Yeah,
particular
yeah, for
case.
sure. And it's interesting to see him as kind of like this family man who's really just really focused on this goal of, protecting those closest to him.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and do you want to tell us who brought us this issue?
Image Comics for sure. Let me look at the details. I literally clicked away from it. Uh, Creators are Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. Colorist is Brad Anderson. Letters by Rob Lee.
Nice, nice. But yeah, no, I definitely agree. Geiger was a really solid start, and for any Image Comics fans, for any independent comics fans who may be familiar with Jeff Johns' work at DC, and he's definitely well known for runs on Flash and Green Lantern, most recently Doomsday Clock with Gary Frank, as well as Batman Three Jokers. Jeff is certainly uh, very well connected in the world of superheroes. So I think for me, one of the more exciting aspects of this project was to see him kind of strike out on his own and create a world for himself. Because when you're doing superhero comics, there's kind of that comfort blanket of, you know, you're in someone else's universe. You can kind of rely on continuity and all that stuff. But you know, when you're creating a world for yourself, it's really all coming from you. You kind of have to figure out how you want to define certain things and really world build on your own. So it's interesting to see Jeff's approach. Um, I think definitely one standout for me was the artwork by Gary Frank, who is an absolutely phenomenal artist. Again, mostly collaborates with Jeff on DC projects and a couple things at Marvel, but it's really interesting to see him kind of outside of his wheelhouse doing a book at Image. So I definitely agree. It was a really solid read. So at the end, Julie, what would you rate this issue?
Probably a 9.
Mhm.
Definitely a 9 out of 10. Just because I'm not certain that that little one tick is definitely uncertainty about where this story is going to head to, because it is kind
Yeah.
of a classic trope of, a protectorate, fighting for, this family. But other than that, I'm looking forward to it as well. Also, the end of it, a lot of Fallout New Vegas vibes meets Futurama.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, this guy must have played Fallout.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's also definitely some Mad Max influence just in the desert wasteland as well.
Yeah, it's
And
true.
I think Jeff mentioned that that was a key influence. But yeah, no, I gave this issue a strong 8.5 out of 10. A very solid debut for this creative team. I'm interested to see where it goes next. I'm hoping it's not just a limited series. I would like to see this go on for a little bit more than 6 issues or so. But you know, if that's the finite story you want to tell, by all means, tell a great one. So Geiger #1, definitely check it out. The next issue that we both had a chance to read is The Silver Coin. This is a new horror anthology um, featuring a revolving cast of writers and one consistent artist, that being Michael Walsh. So for this particular issue in question, this issue was written by Chip Zdarsky, with, again, colors, lines, and letters all done by Michael Walsh, who will be doing that same job throughout the series. So this issue basically revolves around a fairly simple premise of a rock star in the 70s who is kind of, you know, feeling that the genre is a bit out to pasture with the boom of disco at the same time. And he's feeling particularly upset and angry that he feels like the band is not taking off. They're not getting gigs when they want just because disco is really, really blowing up. But the main character is able to find a silver coin that, when he strums it against his guitar, basically makes the music sound incredible and angelic and just wonderful. And they're able to perform a lot of successful shows, and do a lot of great stuff. But the main character is really just fixated on his desire of becoming a rock star, and is kind of isolating his friends. And it all kind of leads to a very twisted and dark place towards the end where his continued use of this mysterious silver coin to play his guitar leads to a pretty unfortunate accident. Now, this was, I think, a very interesting decision to kind of create the story revolving around this one singular object, the mysterious silver coin. And I'll be interested to see what other scenarios the silver coin will appear in future issues. It seems like it's mainly going to be about granting desires, but in a kind of a weird, twisted dark way that results in very terrible and sometimes fatal accidents or situations. I found that the writing by Zdarsky is fairly solid. Again, someone who's also known for his work in the superhero scene, working at Marvel and DC, but also as an artist. And we talked about this in the last episode. Famously worked on Sex Criminals with Matt Fraction. So obviously a very talented cartoonist as well as a talented writer. And then the artwork by Michael Walsh, particularly during some of the more horrific scenes, and I won't spoil those, is very well done. I think the art definitely complements the moody horror tone of the entire issue. So, Julie, what did you think about the silver coin?
I liked it. Very Twilight Zoney. Got a lot of those
Hmm.
kind of vibes. A lot of lessons learned to,
Yeah.
appreciate where you're at in life and to, nothing is going to compete with your ability to work hard to get better. And
Hmm.
sometimes you'll fail, and it's okay to fail. That's what I learned out of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the artwork was beautiful. The storytelling was beautiful. Like, even when I first skimmed it, I could tell what the story. I can tell what kind of story was happening just by looking at the panels, and that was very,
Yeah.
very well done. The transitioning, because I noticed with the coin, the detail when he first gets it, it's closed, and then over
Hmm.
time it opens up to kind of reveal, itself in its own way. It's like, oh hey,
Yeah.
this is what I really am. You can slowly see his descent into the madness with it.
Yeah, and I think yeah, I really like the point that you said where you can kind of get the entire vibe of the story, before you even really fully read it, just based on the artwork. You kind of know what kind of horrific story you're about to read about is gonna entail just by looking at the expressions and some of the color work. So yeah, I had a really great time with this issue. It sounds like you did as well. And I ended up giving this one an 8 out of 10. How did you feel?
I feel good. It kind of reminded me of Monkey's Paw as well, so I would also say an
Yeah.
8 out of 10. It's really good,
Hmm.
but it's predictable.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the Silver Coin #1, start of a new anthology, brought to us by Chip Zdarsky and Michael Walsh. Um, So, with those two issues out of the way, we're going to kind of go in a round robin back and forth style where Julie and I are going to highlight some of the books that we had a chance to read um, kind of separately this week from Image, and in my case, from some other. Oh my God. And in my case, from some other publishers that I'd like to highlight. So, to kick it off, uh, Julie, what's one issue that you read that you'd really like to mention this week? And I'll kind of match with an issue that I read.
Okay. I read Made in Korea. It's. I think I mentioned in the last episode about Alex and Ada, about getting this humanoid droid that you purchased, and it kind
Yeah.
of goes into that direction of existentialism. And I think this comic book is doing something similar because it is a droid that is bought for a family, and there's something else to it that wasn't in Alex and Ada that's in this one, and I'm kind of
Interesting.
getting like iRobot vibes with that. So I'm kind of curious as to how that's going to pan out because they usually don't do a family situation. They usually do kind of it's a partner to partner. Like, oh, I need an adult android. This is a child android, and that
Yeah.
got me thinking also about the Curious Life of Timothy Green. I don't know if you're familiar with that movie. I saw it once
Is
many,
is
many
that the
years
is that the
ago.
movie where they like grow a child?
Yeah, like a plant.
Yeah.
It's this
Yeah.
childless couple that wants to have a kid, and I think this is the same premise with this one. It's just, there's a lot of similarities I'm able to pull from a bunch of other movies and TV that I've seen because I've wasted my
Yeah.
life doing that. But yeah, it's a good read so far. The artistry in this comic book is so beautiful. The colors that they use, there's a lot of attention to detail in their color use
Mhm.
and their transitioning and the gradient, and I really did appreciate that.
Yeah, and tell us again who made this issue and that whole scene.
So the story is by Jeremy Holt, art by George Shaw, lettering by Adam Willett.
Awesome. And any final thoughts on the issue?
Um, it's really well balanced
Mm,
in its artistry and its storytelling. It kind of does like an A B kind of a plot line, but the A
yeah,
Bs are interconnected for sure.
yeah. Awesome. Well, I got the chance to read the third issue of Radiant Black. This is a new series from Kyle Higgins, and I guess this is kind of his first series. Artist Marcelo Costa. I've been following the series so far, and I read the first two issues. I'm a fan of Kyle Higgins, and it's clear that the series has a very, very key Power Rangers Super Sentai influence, which is something that I really appreciate. This issue is basically just the main character, Nathan, um, kind of struggling to break his writer's block because, as we established in some of the previous issues, Nathan is a writer who kind of abandoned his book deal and had to move back home and is basically trying to figure out what to do with his life. But this particular issue sees Nathan really try and focus and hone his writing skills and try and figure out what to do at the same time juggling with the idea of what kind of person do you want to be now that he has these new powers. I think this issue in particular for me really kind of helped me connect with Nathan's character because when we first meet him and he's broke and he's having to deal with all of these insecurities, it's stuff that I'm sure people have gone through before, but it's nothing new. It's not really reinventing the wheel. And while I enjoyed it, I didn't think that it was really original. But I think this angle of having Nathan be a writer and really kind of struggle with writer's block in a very organic way was just something that I connected to. I'm sure, like I said, we've all been there. We've all struggled with trying to get a paper out or really send an email or something like that, and you don't have the words to say, and you procrastinate and put it off, and all of that stuff until you finally are able to sit down and really commit, which is the point at which Nathan comes to at the end of the issue after kind of going through some super heroics, and I think having a really somber moment of realizing this is kind of the person that I want to be. Another highlight is that we finally get the big name drop moment since the series is called Radiant Black. Nathan's friend Marshall is finally able to kind of put together the name Radiant Black after Nathan mentions the name Radiant, which had kind of come to him in a daydream. So yeah, I still am really enjoying this series. For me, I describe it as comfort food because I mean, like I said, while I do love indie books and various books from other publishers, I came in reading superheroes, and it's always kind of nice to have these invincible type superhero books that really embrace the genre. And it's like I said, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's just kind of a fun monthly read that I can come back to and really relax with. So I ended up giving this one an 8.25 out of 10. I like I said, still am enjoying the series. Interested to see where it goes, and I find it very satisfying. Now, Julie, what else did you read this week?
I read The Good Asian
Hmm.
by Pitchut, Tefenki, Lowridge, and Powell. But yeah, so Made in Korea was definitely a bit of a sci-fi story. The Good Asian is more of a noir story, and I'm
Hmm.
partial to noir for sure.
Yeah, yeah, it looked awesome.
Oh, it's really good. It takes place in the 1930s, 1940s, sort of when the internment camps were becoming a thing.
Hmm.
And it takes place in San Francisco, and I happen to live in the Bay Area. So it really kind of so the little places that they go to, I know what they're talking about, and yeah, there's kind of alterations in the place settings and things like that. But when they
Yeah,
draw these big scene shots of Chinatown, I'm like, oh hey, that looks familiar. I know those
yeah,
hills. I've been there a couple of times. But, it's a really good read. I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of mystery. And the protagonist himself, he's got his own little kind of personality.
Mm,
It's almost brooding, but it's a good brooding, which I really appreciate because instead of just being emo about it, it's like it's constructive kind of
yeah.
brooding, and I really appreciate that as well. But yeah, no, this story's really good. 10-10. I'm eager to see what happens next.
Wow,
Keeps you on your
awesome.
toes.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of like a period piece noir story, kind of like the
Yeah.
Great Sleep or something.
But definitely, yeah.
Mm,
And the color
awesome.
gradient too makes it feel like it's in the old times as well.
Like I said, I haven't had a chance to look at it just yet. Excuse me. It looked, yeah, definitely looked something that's right up my alley. Noir, like noir stories too. Both in film, as well as in comics, as well as books or anything. Like I'm a sucker for a good detective story. So this one looked right up my alley. And I do think it's definitely encouraging to see, an Asian lead, an Asian protagonist in kind of the noir role, because usually that's more
Yeah.
reserved for, um, you know, Caucasian men or that sort of thing. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And they definitely tackle that issue in this. They tackle racism in this issue for sure. It's not just subtle in the background. It's front and center, which I
Yeah.
think is a really good story because those are the kinds of stories we hear about very much.
Oh yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
said, it's mostly a a white protagonist.
Yeah. And
So
um and and it definitely sounds like that's a kind of book that would, given that the title is The Good Asian. And it sounds like it would possibly tackle those stereotypes. And like I said, I'm looking at my copy right now, and I noticed that um, one of the covers, or at least the main cover, was done by Dave Johnson. And if you're familiar with that name, Dave Johnson is a very famous cover artist in comics. He's done a bunch of stuff, on Batman and others. But one of my favorites of his is a series called 100 Bullets, which is like the most noir crime fiction story I know of. It's an absolutely incredible series. And Dave Johnson did the covers for every single issue. So seeing him here and doing a story like that, it's really great. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, the Good Asian sounds like you had a good time with it.
I really did. I really did. It was a really fun read. It was an educational read
Mm,
in a way because you get to learn a lot of the the derogatory language that was used toward them in reference to them.
yeah,
But yeah, it's a promising book, and I'm really interested into what's going to happen next.
awesome. Well, one book I got to check out from Dark Horse was Black Hammer Visions #3. This is actually another issue brought to us by Chip Zdarsky, with art by Johnny Christmas and colors by Dave Stewart, and letters by Nate Picos. This issue is basically the same format as the last issue of Black Hammer Visions, which is creator and artist come in and tell a story, usually an untold story about a character from the Black Hammer universe. This particular issue focused on Abraham Slam, obviously before his time, being trapped in the town that they're at the beginning of Black Hammer. And it really focuses on Abe's kind of struggle with retirement, given that he's essentially being replaced by a government sponsored version of his old superhero persona. And so this issue really is a character study on Abraham Slam, who initially kind of confronts the new state sponsored version of Abraham Slam. This state sponsored version is called The Slam, very clever. And basically, Abe gets his ass kicked and is sent to the hospital, and really kind of struggles with his relationships, given that he's retired and he had quit the superhero business, and yet he still finds it in him to just keep going and really challenging this newcomer. And one of the big twists at the issue, I won't go too much in it, kind of causes Abe to reevaluate his actions and really reflect on, maybe I should have been more supportive of this new hero. Maybe I shouldn't have been so angry and crotchety. So yeah, I had a really great time with this issue. I've really been digging the Black Hammer Vision series so far. Um, it's funny, the last issue, Black Hammer Visions #2, was also from a creator that we just talked about, Jeff Johns, and he focused on Madame Dragonfly. And I had really enjoyed that one, so I was definitely eager to check out the next issue. And like I said, it was just a really great character study on Abraham Slam, a really interesting examination of replacement superheroes and what that means for the older generation, and kind of seeing Abe struggle with it was something that was particularly interesting to me. The artwork by Johnny Christmas was solid in some points. I think it was a little weak in others. I definitely noticed that he seemed to struggle with some of the facial features in some places, and during some of the action scenes, it was a little bit almost choppy. It didn't look quite finished. But overall, the artwork was fairly solid. Definitely fluid when it needed to be. So yeah, I definitely had a really solid time reading it, and I would recommend checking out the Black Hammer Vision series, just to see what interesting creators are bringing new stuff to the Black Hammer universe. Julie, what next? What other issues did you get a chance to read?
I read Time Before Time
Mhm.
by Declan Shalvey and Rory McConneville. They were writers. Joe Palmer was the artist. Colorist is Chris O'Halloran, and lettering is Hassan Otsan. Oh, I'm gonna butcher that. Otsmane Elhau. It's another sci-fi one for sure.
Mhm.
It's a time travel. If I wasn't clear, um, I really did like the angular styles that they used in their drawings for this
Mhm.
comic series. Um, it's definitely a another trope for time travel. It's like a point where something bad happens and suddenly you're either in a position where you can't get out of this specific time and you're having to live through it,
Mhm.
or you end up sort of like Squidward Tentacles in SpongeBob when he messes with the time machine and he breaks it and he ends up in this kind of void.
Yeah.
That kind of what do they call it? It's a trope, but it's a problem trope. It's I can't remember what it's called, but it's sort of like a monkey wrench, like a Deus Ex Machina,
Yeah.
where it moves the story along because you broke the machine. Now you don't know where you're at. This creates a problem, a scenario to work the characters out of,
Yeah.
and I think it's a common, but it can be done really well. And I think so far, oh yeah, think Futurama when they go to the end of the Earth,
Ah.
kind of thing. They go to the end of time. But this here, you don't know exactly what time they're at because something happened in the machine, it broke. Because they're really good at telling you when they transition between time periods. They tell you straight up, this is a time period, and then they live through it.
Yeah.
And then there's a point where, they go to something happens in the machine, it breaks, and they end up somewhere, and the time period is just all pixelated and compromised. You can't even tell what number it is. There's
Yeah.
no sense of numbers at all. And I'm like, wow. And that's where the story really kind of starts to
Mhm.
pick up, and that's where the comic ends. I'm like, whoa, what? They kept me hanging on. I want to know
Ah.
more.
Yeah. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, but it's so far I'm invested. I'm interested.
Yeah.
They really kind of hooked me near the end there, and then once the end happened, I'm like, I'm here. I'm
Yeah.
here for it.
Yeah. Now, do you tend to like time travel stories? Because I can sometimes be, mixed on them. They can be very hit or miss.
Same here. I don't usually have a lot of time for time travel,
Yeah.
so to see a lot of time stuff happening is nice. Kind of threw a pun in there, but yeah, no, the it's a classic trope as well. Um, I kind of have an idea of what's going to happen, but because there's also another background story on top of this, rather than just it being time travel,
Mm.
there's another layer of story on it that kind of makes it a bit. It gives it the filling, the muscle. So the time
Yeah.
stuff is sort of like the skeleton, and the other story is definitely the guts and the real meat of the story. And that's what I'm really most interested in because it creates a lot of conflict.
Yeah.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Awesome, awesome. Um, yeah, no, I definitely was interested to look at this one. Because I usually only know that writer, Declan Shalvey, from his artwork. I guess I'm not super familiar with him acting as a writer, but it sounds like, it's a pretty interesting story. And it definitely had you hooked.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Um, Very cool. I got a chance to read the second issue of a book from Boom called Proctor Valley Road. This was brought to us by uh, Alex Child and the ever incredible Grant Morrison, with artwork by Naomi Franquez, and it was colored by Tamara Bonvillain, also absolutely incredible, with letters from Jim Campbell. Um, this one, not a ton happened. It really just kind of followed up from the first issue, where the big reveal at the end is that the boys have gone missing, and they had received their draft cards. Given that this story takes place in 1970 and the Vietnam War is still going on, and the girls who had kind of driven them through Proctor Valley Road, where they had last been seen, are basically being questioned and interrogated by the police, and they don't really know what's going on. And basically the most of the issue kind of focuses on them, um, kind of reflecting on the mystery of what happened, and they're not really sure, and they're just expecting the boys to turn up at some point. But we know that something a little sinister has happened based on what we saw in the last issue. But clearly, there's some more supernatural stuff going on. There's a scene where they're all hanging in a junkyard, and strange letters begin to appear, and they think they're on acid, but it turns out everything's normal, and things are just kind of very strange. So the main character, or one of the main characters, goes to um, visit Proctor Valley Road to kind of figure out, what's going on. Where are the boys? Why haven't they turned up? And that's where she sees a bunch of strange stuff on the road, including a carcass of a deer, and kind of these strange wolf creatures. And her friends later turn up to save her, but that's when each one of them kind of starts freaking out. Some of them are feeling dizzy, some of them are seeing double, some of them start to become violently sick, and that's when they all turn around to see the mysterious landlady who had previously been mentioned in the first issue as kind of like this secret malevolent force, and they're not really sure what's going on. But this issue is it's really cute. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't mostly following the series for Grant Morrison, who's a writer that I absolutely love. But it's fun to see like this kind of. I call it cute mainly just because of the artwork, even though some of the material, like I mentioned, is actually kind of horrific. But yeah, it's just a really fun kind of like period piece horror series with a group of teenagers, and they're kind of trying to investigate the mystery. And I'm interested to see where it goes. Like I said, it's not reinventing the wheel. I kind of a standard script for Grant Morrison. Like I said, I don't see him pushing any kind of crazy psychedelic imagery or really pushing the boundary of the comic book format. But it's just like I said, a fun series to return to each month. And that's why I ended up giving this one a 7.75 out of 10. But with that, Julie, what else did you get a chance to read this week?
I did read. Uh, I read Helm Grey Castle.
Mm-hmm.
It was It's definitely a D&D style game. Excuse me, style comic.
Yeah.
The artistry is nice, but I mean the story didn't really kind of hook me very
Mm-hmm.
much. I didn't find myself too interested in what was going on. It's definitely not my cup of tea, but it is beautiful. It is really good.
Yeah.
I will give it that. They put a lot of detail and a lot of time into their work here.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where even at the end of the at the back of the comic, they give you all these little details about the armor, the locations, the setting, the maps. So it's story by Henry Barajas.
Mm-hmm.
Color artist is Brian Valenza. Penciler Ramat Handoko. Letter artist Gabriella Downey, editor, designer, proofreading.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's really well done. There's a lot more detail in this than in the other comics that I read. You can tell they spent a lot of time really putting in all the work. Um, there's actually there's a line that I thought was really funny that stood out to me because I couldn't take this seriously at all because it's a drama. It's a D&D drama, and I don't take dramas seriously.
Yeah.
Just because it's I watched a lot of the old reality TV like with Anna Nicole Smith, I Love New York. So drama in and of itself is just laughable to me. But there's
Yeah,
a
no,
point where one of the main
I could
characters.
never
I'm
get into
sorry.
it myself, so you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, I was I was really young, and my parents chose to watch those reality TV shows. So there was a
Uh,
point where I had no choice but to watch it, but I couldn't take it seriously. But there's a bit right here that
yeah,
says, "I promise we'll kill something when I get back," and it's a father telling it to his child that's going to miss him, and I just started laughing.
yeah,
Like that's such an endearing statement. I promise we'll kill something when I get back.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's a good read if you're into that kind of stuff, but I mean it was just a lot of fun. Although I did like where they included the I guess the ancient Aztec society, and there was a lot of accuracies in its I guess in its costuming, in its titles. That's like probably my favorite part was that because it's D&D meets ancient history, and I'm all for that. So I may just kind of keep
Oh,
this in the background for myself to read the second one to see where they go with the Aztec culture.
yeah. No, I'd say check it out. Just kind of see if you're still there's still an interest there in the second issue.
Yeah, it's floating there. It's getting
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. Great. I had a chance to read the seventh issue of the Scumbag. This issue was brought to us by writer Rick Remender, with art from Francesco Mobili, and colors from Moreno Dinicio, I believe is how it's pronounced, with letters from Russ Wooten. Um, this issue continues the story of the world's worst spy, who's an absolute scumbag. I really don't know any other way to describe the series. But basically, we pick up with Ernie Ray and his strange band of misfits from Central Authority, basically fighting with these. The best way that I can describe them is straw man versions of like really aggressive political people on Twitter, which sounds like it might go off a little bit worse than it actually is. But I think it's an interesting form of political satire that Remender puts here, because this organization that they belong to, Moonflower, appears to be kind of a satirized version of the extremely vigilant crowd on social media that you might see. And obviously, we're not gonna get too political here, but it's a very interesting approach to see kind of Ernie play off these characters. So after they kind of dispatch the characters who have come to attack them, Ernie is kidnapped and taken to the main Moonflower base, where he's basically confronted with the main leader of the group, and she's kind of telling him about her plans to create a world of world peace, but one that's kind of run by groupthink. And Ernie is very skeptical at first, and feels that it's kind of similar to the guys that he had fought in the previous arc, Scorpionus, which was kind of the ultra right wing, uh, you know, pseudo fascist group, and basically saying that their tactics are a bit too controlling, a bit too assertive, and she's kind of firing back, saying Central Authority doesn't really take any side, and they're acting to basically just protect the status quo. And it's a really interesting back and forth that Ernie and the leader of Moonflower have. And then Ernie basically is kind of like, well, I don't really want to deal with this shit, so I'm out. But the leader of Moonflower basically makes an offer saying, if you serve us, I'll give you one of the girls that you desired, that kind of tricked you into going onto this moon base. This issue
This sounds like a
is
political. I'm sorry, go for it.
oh no, go ahead.
I was going to say this sounds like a political commentary from like the broad perspective and
Oh
into the
yeah,
personal perspective.
yeah. No, it definitely is, and it's interesting to see Remender kind of satirize a lot of a lot of the conversations. There's some very funny lines if you ever get a chance to read the issue that kind of some made me laugh. Like one of them, I think one of the characters that Ernie has to fight made me laugh. I think his name is the Signal, um, and basically his power is just screaming at high pitched voices things that are very obvious that no one would disagree with, but he's basically just saying them so that people will like him more. Which is a
Ah, I
like
get
I
it, like
said,
a
a
talking head
kind
on
of a
TV.
yeah, yeah, a very funny straw man of some people who just kind of say very popular talking points to just get recognition, but they're not actually standing behind them. So yeah, no, it's definitely a kind of high octane spy thriller political commentary that I find it to be very funny. Maybe it's just my weird sense of humor, but every time I read an issue, it makes me laugh, it makes me smile, which is always nice. And Rick Remender definitely knows how to make something funny. So I ended up giving this one an 8.5 out of 10. Just a very solid entry in the series. I think really the series has only kind of had one hiccup for me, and that was the second issue. But so far, it's just been a really uh, fun, really enjoyable, high octane, funny read. So I definitely recommend it. Julie, do you have one more review for us?
I do. I have Hey Kids Comics. Uh, Writer and artist is Howard Chaykin.
Ah,
Colorist
yes.
is Gustavo Yen. Letterer is Ken Berzenek. And the cover was done by Chaykin and Yen.
Mm.
It is a really good read. What kind of threw me was the artistry stuff. I mean, because it starts off in like 1970, but I can't get over the style. It's so, I don't know. It just seems so messy.
Yeah, Howard
But
Chaykin was pretty big in the 80s for kind of pushing a lot of the creator-owned stuff. He did, books like Times Squared, um, and an American Flag. This is the part of the show where I get to geek out about all the comics history I know, so just bear with me.
no, go for it. That's why
um,
you're here.
but yeah, no, his style is definitely, I'd say now more than ever is kind of an acquired taste because it definitely was pretty revolutionary back in 1984 and 1988. But whether or not it's appreciated is really up to the reader. But it sounds like it didn't really work for you.
Yeah, no, it makes it kind of hard to look at, but I get what they're going for.
Mm.
But yeah, those shot with the eyes, he likes zooming in on eyes very much. Just a lot of eye holes in very dramatic scenes
Mm.
where it says, "Oh yeah, you gonna watch TV?" And then he's like, "In a minute," and then it zooms in on the eye, "In a minute,"
Yeah,
and I couldn't keep myself together anymore. I was laughing.
yeah,
But yeah, and then it jumps to like the 50s for some reason, and it's a very self-aware comic about comics itself. I
okay.
kind of see it as like a history of comics
Mm.
while they were struggling,
Mm.
and it moves into that kind of era, and that's kind of where it began to lose me a little bit because I was getting sort of Mad Men vibes about it.
Sure.
I haven't really seen Mad Men except through my parents because they would watch it a lot, and I would just kind of pass through in the background and be like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah.
these are Madison Avenue. We're doing marketing things, but these are cartoonists."
Mm.
So it's a very self-aware story.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the style. I guess you're right. It's going to grow on me at some point. Um,
Yeah, I think it just depends. Some people, aren't a big fan of Chaikin style. Some people it may take them a while. I think, you're perfectly in the right for maybe it's not there for you right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's good. It's well written for
Mhm.
sure. That's all I have to say on this. I don't know if I'm going to continue reading it. There wasn't much to kind of hook me and grab me. I may
Yeah.
out of curiosity just kind of see where the story goes. I may get back into it, but I'm not rushing to see what happens next.
Yeah, I know I was definitely I kind of wish I'd checked this one out just because this is the second volume of Hey Kids comics. I know Chaikin had done an earlier one and it kind of went on hiatus and now it's back. And I'm a fan of like some of Chaikin's stuff. I think it can be very interesting, very evocative. certainly very controversial at points, and then at other points, I think it pushes it a little bit too much. But I'm definitely eager to check it out based on the description that you gave. Just about how it's kind of talking about comics history and everything there. So yeah, interesting, very interesting. My final book that I read this week is a book that I will recommend, but I'll put like a little asterisk after it, um, which is basically I, I I would recommend this issue. I think it's well done, but I wouldn't blame you if you can't read it or can't find it because it's a bit of an exclusive book. So I got a chance to read a book called ENIAC #2 from Bad Idea Comics, which is a new publisher that really got started this year. They've kind of been hyping their stuff for the past year and a half or so because the company is basically made up of a bunch of ex-Valiant editors who all kind of left around a similar time and then decided to start their own comic book company. And these are kind of the first books that they're putting out. And their distribution method is very strange because they don't do any digital versions. They don't do any trade paperbacks or collected versions. You can only buy the single issues in participating comic book stores. And I'm fortunate to be in a place where one of my LCSs happens to be a bad idea store, as they call them, and basically got the first and second issue. So I checked out the first issue, thought it was interesting, asked them if they had the second issue. They did, and so I checked this one out. But basically, this one kind of follows up from the first issue, where Falk and Fletcher have escaped from the basically wreckage of their plane and are trying to spring one of the former Soviet coders from prison to basically get information on how to stop ENIAC. And after they break him out, he kind of gives them a whole spiel on the history of how they first tried to attack ENIAC, how ENIAC had kind of formed this secret underground Soviet community, how it was just impossible to anticipate what ENIAC was going to do. And yeah, it was just a really interesting read. I was really glad that I got a chance to pick up the second issue. I wasn't entirely sure if they would have it available there, but I do think it's an interesting alt history book. It's hard for me not to dock the score of this issue just because of how inaccessible it is. It's hard for me to gauge interest just because people can't really read it unless you can find a copy, which is unfortunate because I would love to talk about it with more people, but like I said, it's just not widely accessible. And I do think it is a decent book, certainly interesting enough that I went out of my way to find the second issue. So yeah, I would probably give this one a 7.75 out of 10. I think the artwork by Doug Braithwaite and Matt Kint. No, I think the artwork by Doug Braithwaite and Diego Rodriguez is very well done. I'm a big fan of Doug Braithwaite, um, and
Is
it's
it an ongoing series or is it like it just ended at two?
it's a limited series. It's only 4 issues, which is nice because if your store is able to pick up these issues, you're not buying like 17 of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's unfortunate that more stores don't have access to it. I guess if you want to get a copy, you have to really like go out of your way to make sure that your LCS requests it, and then they'll become a store, and then they'll ship copies to you. But even that's not a guarantee because sometimes they don't have enough copies. It's very strange. But like I said, I guess I'm fortunate enough to have had a store that's stocked the first 2 issues, and hopefully I'll be able to get the next 2 issues so I can complete the series. But yeah, like I
Hey,
said,
fingers crossed.
yeah, hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood. But yeah, like I said, a solid read. I'm interested in the third one. Like I said, hopefully I can pick it up. But yeah, it's just I wish that more people could have access to it because I think it's a really interesting one, and I would be surprised to see if they didn't eventually at some point find a way to expand their reach because they are a fairly new company. So I can see that maybe they just want to limit to a couple stores, but If you wanna have a laugh, go on eBay and look up some of the prices that they've been putting out for copies of ENIAC 1 and ENIAC 2. They are way too high, and it's ridiculous that people are just reselling them at ridiculous prices. But
Well, like 40, $50.
yeah, no, I saw one copy of ENIAC go for like $100 for a first printing of issue
Whoa.
number one, which is insane, for a new publisher. But it is what
I
it
guess it's
is.
trying to get on the ground floor.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's feeding a lot of speculators, I guess. Um, but with that in mind, let's move on to our top three books of this week. Julie, did you have any particular top three books of this week that you felt strongly about that you'd like to share?
The Good Asian, definitely my number one.
Hmm.
My number two, Made in Korea, and my number three is Geiger for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, no, my top three for this week, and number three, I had Radiant Black. Just like I said, super solid series, and I'm having a fun time with this superhero story. Number two was a three-way tie between the Scumbag, Black Hammer Visions, and Proctor Valley Road. I couldn't decide between those three which one should be number two. So you all win, I guess. And then at number one, I had the Silver Coin. I really had a fun time with that one. I was actually debating
Yeah, that
whether
was
or not
good.
to put the Silver Coin or Geiger as my number one, just because both of those I thought were really stellar. But the Silver Coin won out, so I guess an honorable mention goes to Geiger number one.
Yeah.
And I know we didn't really get a chance to dive into this issue, but I'd also like to give an honorable mention to Noctera number two. That's a new series from Image from Scott Snyder, Tony S. Daniel, Tomu Murray, and letters from And World Design. Like I said, fairly new series, kind of just revolves around the big elevator pitch of, what if the sun went dark and these characters are forced to live in a sunless world, and our main character is kind of like a transporter who basically rides around a truck and transports people to safety. And in this particular issue, they have a new cargo that's been trying to get to a sanctuary because they believe that they have solved a way to basically get the sun back. And I thought it was just a really solid read. I like Scott Snyder sometimes, and I would definitely recommend checking it out. But yeah, Julie, did you have any issues that you weren't particularly fond of that you'd like to put under
The biggest thinker.
Oh, that's nasty.
Well, the thinker would probably be the bus, but
Mhm.
I'd have to say the Hey Kids comics one. That one I'm just kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not even certain where the direction of the story's going either. Because it's just kind of floating back and forth. I didn't know what was going on between like a series of two characters. Just it was like it was a set of two, maybe four times over, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just gonna let that. The bus is there. It's the mechanic. It's gonna be under it. I'm gonna leave it there.
Yeah, no, I briefly flicked through it, and it definitely looked pretty scattershot, even for Howard Chaykin.
Yeah.
Uh,
I will
yeah.
say with the silver coin, I was first drawn to it initially, like just upon looking at it. I
Mhm.
used to work at a punk, like a not a steampunk, but like a cyberpunk nightclub in
Yeah.
downtown San Francisco. I used to make pizza there, and I'm familiar with the bands that used to play there. I attended a couple of their events
Uh-huh.
because I was an employee. I got to go for free.
Mhm.
So, and also the kind of people that would walk through there, people, we worked the Folsom Street Fair. I worked that a couple of times, and there was this one guy, I'll never forget him. It was awesome. Just straight up head, like he had a gimp mask, a t-shirt, pants, shoes, socks, straight up pictures of buttholes.
Oh wow.
And his
Oh, wow.
mouth hole where the zipper was at, it was just a butthole that he had to unzip and order his pizza.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my god, this is great.
Yeah, no, that's intense. I'd run if I saw that.
But it was my job. He just
Yeah.
wanted some pepperoni pizza. I'm like, yo, I got you. I've met drag queens. I can't remember one of the drag queens I met, but she was kind of famous. She was like a B-list.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, she dresses in like the nuns and like the. It's not satanic. The opposite is satanic. Think of like if the Virgin Mary was decked out in like
Oh,
gold and sparkles and shit.
I'm surprised
Like
no
that's the
one
kind of
was like
drag.
that's super sacrilegious. I feel like the
Not
Christian
in San
crowd might get a little
Francisco.
upset. Oh yeah, but yeah, San Francisco. So yeah,
Yeah, not in San
obviously.
Francisco, man. That anything goes.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, so reading the Silver Coin, I can almost definitely figure out the club that they were playing at.
Yeah,
Like, oh, I probably worked at a club like that.
yeah,
Cool.
that's awesome.
Drugs, dancing, it's all there.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's awesome. Yeah, no, I didn't really have a biggest stinker this week. I guess the weakest issue for me would just be ENIAC #2. Again, not a terrible issue by any means, but just not the best one of the bunch. At least the bunch of comics that I read this week. And again, I
That sounds a
still,
little underwhelming. I'm sorry, that sounds a little underwhelming. It's such a, I guess it's a hard to get book, but then when you do
yeah,
get it, the story's like, it doesn't really feel, it doesn't seem to feel worth it to go out of your way to get a book that's eh.
yeah, I know. I mean, it seems to like the two people that I've had a chance to speak to about ENIAC that have actually gotten a chance to read it have said, it's interesting, it's solid, but it's not breaking down any doors. And it's like you'd think for a book that's so hard to find, just like you said, you'd want it to be a little better. But I don't know. Like I said, I'm interested enough in the story that I'm like, I want to finish it, right? I only have 2 issues left, might as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's sometimes a little disappointing that it's like so hard to find. It's not even that great. But yeah, no, like I said, not terrible, just not great by any fashion. But with that, that is the end of our show. Come back next week when we will be talking about more independent books. And as always, you amazing humans out there, thank you so very much for listening. You are the reason why we do this. Visit campsite.bio/Not a Robot Comics to hear all of our episodes on nearly any podcast platform, and patreon.com/Not a Robot Podcast for the exclusive content that we make for our patrons from all of our offerings: Kids Corner, Real Talk Movies, TV, and more. Again, just starting at $1 a month. And with that, there's only one way that we say goodbye around here. Until next time, be good to each other and don't be a robot.
Deuces.
Just